Welcome to the CTO Compass podcast. I'm your host, Mark Wormhoort, tech strategist and executive coach. In every episode, we meet tech leaders, from startup CTOs to enterprise CIOs, to explore what it means to lead in tech today. They share their stories and their lessons so that you can navigate your own journey in tech. Let's dive into today's episode.
Clive Moore spent 25 years in UI UX design. In creative agency, he led design teams for clients like Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, Hitachi even, and he is still teaching UX at Georgian College. Then he started building AI platforms. And he didn't start there as an engineer, like a lot of us, but as someone who spent decades designing and figuring out how teams actually work. He's now the founder of GPT Studio and Workilo, and we're going to get into those companies. His core argument is that one of the most AI builders would disagree with the model. It doesn't really matter. It's what you actually build around it. Clive, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Before we get into all the questions that I have and what I really want to learn from you, what do we really need to know about your background and where you come from?
I think you pretty much summarized it very well. I'm a designer by trade. I actually started in brand design. I've run a couple of digital agencies. And so I do approach it more from a usability side. And I like to keep, my interfaces I like to keep pretty clean. And then I started to build, websites back as part of an extension of the corporate design. It started in 97. And so I started to sort of delve into the more technical side, and then realizing that privacy and data was an important component of that, and just trying to figure out how to keep all the architectures together and keep people safe, because we've seen what can happen when you're not paying attention.
And we're seeing a lot more of those every day, even here in the Netherlands. We're seeing more and more data hygiene issues, even with really big companies. So I get that as well. Let's start with that design. You started in hands-on design, but I think that was at TreeFrog, and then you actually moved also into leadership. So tell us a bit about your UI, UX career before we get into the more AI stuff.
So UI and UX, I did when I sort of moved out of corporate communications from the Mars Discovery District and joined the TreeFrog team. I became part of the R&D team. So we started developing software. So I got to work with some really talented engineers there, and I got to see how they approach solutions in like a totally different mindset and a totally different approach that I'd never even considered before. And that's where I started to get the whole architecture concept and figure out that, there's a lot more going on underneath the surface than most people even realize. And then being in the digital media space and, building things on top of WordPress, which, back in the early days, it sort of empowered me to do a bunch of things I shouldn't be able to do. And that's clearly actually the problem with it, is that you're building things that you shouldn't be able to do because you don't know what's going on. And then there's a ton of other security issues. And I mean, there's an adage in the web design world is it's not if your WordPress site's going to get hacked, it's when. And so I had a couple of customers and it's just crazy. You have a couple of bad actors, and it just takes a whole bunch of time. So I had one case where there was some hackers who were literally got into a customer's chat thread. And so they were posting Getty images into that without a license, clearly. And so Getty's lawyers went in and started to threaten my client. And he was just like a little shipping and logistics company, like a two-man shop. And they're threatening him with like $100,000 worth of lawsuits to cease and desist on using their images without paying the licensing fees. And he didn't even know it was happening, because it was a little thing just in the background that wasn't even showing on the website anywhere. Like, it wasn't really obvious, but they're out there. They're doing that kind of thing. And then I had another instance. It was actually an instance of GitLab. So I had a self-hosted instance, and I didn't keep the patches properly. And the next thing I know is somebody's got all of my repos locked up and basically encrypted, and trying to get me to pay the ransom, right? Fortunately, I did have a decent little backup system, so I was able to just sort of kill the instance that they were, roll back like a week, and fortunately the exploit wasn't there, so I could get all my code bases back. But I mean, that's a pretty easy way to kill an agency, like just right off the top. Like I didn't have access to any of my customers' code anymore. So now I pay for licensing and I pay for somebody else to manage those kinds of things, so that's not part of what I have to do and worry about on a day-to-day basis. And so then that's really kind of what got me sort of spurred towards more infrastructure and building infrastructures that's safer for agencies. And so Agency in a Box is my operating company. And that's the one that sort of has built the GPT Studio and the Workilo projects.
Nice. I love this story. Also about the hacks that you actually enjoyed yourself. Why did you go? I mean, it's easy. I mean, I've also been an entrepreneur. I went to entrepreneurship. I worked in the UI UX world. Actually worked for some big companies, and then you decided to go solo, build your own company, build your own AI platforms. What brought you to that point, to that decision?
That's an interesting question. So I exited out of my second agency, and then I sort of was I got into working with again with one of the developers from Lasso and Lasso Soft, a sort of a side shoot of old Apple technology. I don't know if you remember the FileMaker platform, which was their database. So LMDL, or Lasso Dynamic Markup Language, was the way to get FileMaker databases onto the web. And so I hooked up with one of those guys, and he was building a better Chat GPT, was what it was called at the time. And so we started working on this project together, and he's since left and gone on to do something else. And now I'm just championing the rest of the project. And it's pretty much that. It's a GPT Studio is now what it's called. And it allows you to connect your chat to a whole bunch of different infrastructure pieces. So it has built-in SEO components. It has built-in connections to Google Drive, Google Workspace. You can literally just talk to it and get your analytics for the month instead of trying to go through that search console. So, I mean, for independent operators, I could see how this became a really powerful platform for like solopreneurs and small businesses to be able to do a lot more with the resources that they had without, having to hire 5 developers or, building a huge back end at a massive cost for them. So I just saw how that was, it just sort of clicked to me. And then, of course.
And there's 2 products. There's GPT Studio and Workilo. How do those work together? What do each of them do?
So the GPT Studio is really the brains of the operation. It's where all of the agents are configured, and each of the agents I like to keep guardrails on things. So I have like basically specialized agents. So I have one that is in SEO research and keyword research, and so then they then pass that information off to the writer. The writer then goes and builds out a long blog, and then the blog gets sent over to a social media manager. It gets cut up into 5 or 6 different pieces for the different platforms, and so that's sort of the back end. The Workilo component is basically creates autonomous workflows with like sort of gateways for the human to approve the work and revise and iterate on it. So say you don't like what the creative writer has come back with, you can iterate through a chat window and it can then update the content, but it all sort of stays within that specialized work area. And then once you get that, you're happy with that, you then say, okay, let's go to the social media guy. And then he chops it up, says, well, okay, that one's too long, or I don't like the way that's written. So you can then iterate on all of those individually, and then publish directly to the web. So I can basically, I can create a keyword researched blog post, 1,200 words, search for images through Pexel, because we have an API connection to that too. So you can include some stock photography as well. and post that all to WordPress within 5 minutes, provided you're happy with what comes back the first time. Yeah. So the studio is the back end where all of the engineering work is done. And then the Workilo is basically, it's a very simplified way to create workflows, much simpler than trying to use an N8N platform, right? If anybody's ever worked in that thing, I mean, that's just horrendous. That's a horrible user experience. I wasted about 3 hours in there yesterday myself, and I'm experienced, right? So can't imagine a novice person or the average businessman going in there to do anything with that, right? So that's sort of what I try to do, right? I try to keep my platforms as user-friendly as possible and as locked down as possible too, because OpenAI in particular is one of those platforms that's designed to engage, and it's basically, like, literally is there just to keep you in, because it'll say, how about this? Or how about you want to do this and you want to do that? Well, then the next thing you know, it's forgotten what you started with, and you're all the way down this little rabbit hole. And that's not good for anybody, because it's basically a time suck. And my unit kind of keeps you focused because everybody's got guardrails. They do individual things and they pass things back and forth. So that's, I suppose, one of the other advantages to the GPT Studio component is that the agents are aware of other agents, and they're also aware of the other threads. So you can have, like, they can access the other discussions that you've had.
And they're aware of the actual goal that you're working towards. So they're not just drag you off and push you into a rabbit hole.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Nice. So, and who's the audience? Who did you build this for?
So I would say, people who are interested or know that they should get into AI, but have no idea where to start, and that don't necessarily have a largely technical background. And because the GPT Studio platform is very much like a chat interface. Like, so if you've used OpenAI's ChatGPT, you pretty much get how it works. You talk to it, you have a conversation with it, you have your custom agents, as I mentioned. And the other thing is that it's LLM agnostic. So depending on what model is more powerful or the new one comes out, you don't have all your data locked into one where you have to sort of dump it out and go over to here and put it in. You literally just select a different model from the toggle, and it still has access to all of your information, all that historical data. All of that stuff is still available. And currently I've got 5 different models in there. I've got OpenAI, I've got Claude, I've got DeepSeek, I've got Cohere, which is the Canadian LLM. And then we're looking at inserting Gwen and some of the other open source ones that are privacy centered.
Before we jump back in, here is something that I've learned from over 30 years of working in technology. The hardest part of leadership, it's not the technology, and it's not even the people or the teams. It's often that you're at it alone by yourself. There's no one in the room that fully gets what you're dealing with. There's no one that you can trust to discuss your decisions with. If that sounds familiar, find me on LinkedIn, Mark Wormhor, and tell me what's in your mind. There's no pitch, just a discussion with somebody who's sat in that chair as well. Let's get back to it.
And then we talk about adoption. Actually, you're based in Canada. I think you said somewhere that 88% of Canadian businesses haven't even adopted AI. And most of the ones that did actually abandoned it again in 9 days. And I don't think that stat is very different in other countries. Why is that?
Largely, why? There is still a lot of fear in the marketplace about about what these AI systems do. And a lot of people, they go in and they type something and they get garbage out. And I mean, I think Dan Martell has said that the value of a company isn't going to be whether or not they use AI, it's going to be the value of their prompts, right? So with my agency background and all of the SOPs that we've had and the systems and processes that we've developed, I'm pretty much able to pre-train a lot of these things so that they're good at giving you the output that you want right off the hop. So you don't have to train it. They're pre-trained and again, sort of specialized within that industry. So you don't get the garbage out because they're already sort of pre-formatted to a certain degree. And also there's a fear of platform login. It says, well, which one do I use? Right. So it's like, oh, well, you could use this one, but then this one's better at that. Right. So for example, we do still use OpenAI's ChatGPT 5 because it's actually much better at creating images and graphics than Claude is. Claude's actually pretty good at writing and keeping your tone of voice and your brand voice together. And so all of those things are, again, I should mention that we do actually have a brand voice creator baked into the GPT Studio format. So even if you don't have a brand voice that's been put together by an agency, you can literally come in, give it a few samples of your work, adjust a few sliders to get the right tone of voice. It'll generate samples of that work, and then bang, you've got your brand voice created. So anytime you come back in, it'll basically spit it out in that same voice with that same the same tonality, technical versus friendly. So there's a variety of different, it's a scale, right? It's a spectrum. So you can go sort of all the way to like super technical PhD level tech, or you could go like, yo, dude, what's happening, man? Right? Super friendly and casual, right? So there's that, right? So you can sort of really dial in your brand voice right within the platform pretty easily.
What are some of the clients that are now using it? What are they saying? What are they using it for?
So I have a couple of clients on it. One, so in the construction industry, they're using it to sort of automate a lot of their paperwork. Check their invoices for fraud, for example, and erroneous charges, because in a big job site, you get a whole bunch of invoices from a whole bunch of suppliers, and you kind of got to make sure everything's on track with your budget. So that's one of the ones that they're using. I have an executive assistant model in there that one of my other clients is using, just basically to help them keep control of their calendar and their emails. It sort of checks for any things that are operational or important and gives them a summary so that they can get quick access to, and they're not buried in like 300 messages every day, right? Because, as executives get pretty busy. I got a PowerPoint presentation builder in there. So they throw in a bunch of documents and it sort of spits it back out on brand with their logo and their colors and all that stuff. So it sort of streamlines that sort of look, and everybody gets the same look throughout the department. Yeah, so it's a variety of different things. I actually used the GPT Studio to make Workilo, the other front end. So it did all of the voxel style artwork and created all my copy and literally gave me the first bunch of pages that I then turned into a Svelte kit app.
Those voxel images indeed on Workilo. They're so very, very 1990s.
Right? Well, I wanted to make them friendly, and I wanted to still get across the idea that they're digital assistants. So I didn't want to, make anybody think that there's a real person back there. So I wanted to really keep that. And with the Minecraft movie coming out, it was sort of on par and sort of right in the same sort of look and feel. So people would get it.
A quick one before we continue. If you're getting something out of this conversation, please hit the subscribe button below. That way, other tech leaders can find us as well. I would really appreciate it. Let's get back to it.
Then moving on, like I already said, you're in Canada. You actually built GPT Studio on Canadian servers specifically. A lot of people just don't care and they just go for the cheapest option, or they just go to Amazon, wherever. Why that decision?
Well, largely because I see, privacy is the number one issue. So we have PIPEDA and PHIPAA, which is the privacy of personal information and your privacy of your healthcare information. If you get anywhere near any one of those verticals, then you kind of have to have your data on Canadian servers because we have data sovereignty here. We're not subject to the American Patriot Act, which literally allows them to sniff sort of everything and anything that's on your server. Also, the Cloud Act gives them access to anything that's on your cloud. So not only did I do that, I actually went with the Akamai backend and their cloud services because they're not Amazon. And so I've got a bunch of Ubuntu, and I'm using Post SQL on the back end, and just trying to keep everything sort of siloed and protected under our data sovereignty laws, for sure. And because I see two of my clients are actually not necessarily government, but government adjacent. So they still have that idea of the corporate information. They don't want it being trained. They don't want anybody getting access to it because they do have some legislative related issues. And privacy is a fairly big concern for some of my customers.
Why would you say that a lot of other companies, I mean, I see that here in Europe where GDPR is really big, and still I see that 80-90% of companies still run on Microsoft, Google, Amazon. Is that the same?
Yeah, honestly, it is still the same here. So I protect them as much as I can. So the GPT Studio does still have connectors to the Google Workspace, so that if you're putting your data up there, that's fine. But your internal processing documents still say siloed. So any of your actual data goes in there. So it's whatever your final outputs are is what ends up over there, not the work product that goes into creating it. And Microsoft, yeah, we do have that same problem here. The one customer who's using my EA model and my PowerPoint model, their IT department was suggested that they use Copilot, which is Microsoft's siloed version of OpenAI, which is less competent than anything that OpenAI has. So I was watching them work the other day, and it was profanity after profanity, just the frustration. It builds an Excel spreadsheet, but it only shows this much in the window, and you can't copy what's over there. So you have to take screen grabs of the damn thing. It's like, how is this usable? How?
It's been a while since I used it, but it was never any good. If you go back to AI, everybody's talking about AI agents and autonomous agents, and everybody that's acting completely, or agents that are acting completely on their own without you intervening. You've built this, I'd say, almost the other way around, where AI is more a work along, I'd say, I think is what you call it, where you can intervene, you can check, and it's more like working together. Why that approach, and why not autonomous agents?
Largely because they tend to confabulate. And there's at this point, even the people building the LLMs don't know why, and they don't know how to stop it, right? So you kind of do need to keep the human in the loop so that you have quality and control, so that you're not filling the world with AI slop, as they call it. And you know that there's been a lot of heat on LinkedIn lately about all of the AI generated posts, and well, putting the guardrails around these guys kind of helps that. So if you've got your writer that's already set up with your brand voice and knows how you speak, it will always pretty much come out speaking like you. You can, kill all of the M dashes pretty easy. You just need to tell it, don't use M dashes. Don't fill all my posts with emojis. Don't start with breaking or just in or this is a hot lead, or, all of the typical AI phrases, right? Which have become pretty easy to spot. And I don't know why exactly, but so your writer keeps them in there, and then you get to actually verify that the copy is right and it is on par. So, I mean, you can set the Workilo up, you set it off, it does some keyword research, it comes back with, this is what I found. You can, basically send you a Slack message so that you can go quickly grab it, go, oh yes, accept and approve, or no, this is not the keyword I'm after this time, I want to adjust that. And it goes, makes the iteration, comes back, sends it to the writer. And then you get to proofread the blog, say, okay, that's good, away we go. And it is just there to keep, well, it is there actually to manage your own brand, just so that you're not contributing to the AI slop, and so that you seem like a reputable person and a professional and know what you're talking about. It is actually there to keep people from hurting themselves.
Yeah. I read on LinkedIn as well every day. Something else entirely, or it's more now the privacy. You're using all these big systems as well. I mean, GPT Studio, I think it can use Claude, it uses OpenAI, maybe Gemini, some of the open source system. You also posted somewhere that you agree with Karen Howe's investigation into AI companies, and they're operating like empires, almost trying to conquer the world with I don't know, a sense of fear or FOMO of just being left out. How do you reconcile that for yourself? Where on the one hand, these are, let's say, almost empires trying to conquer the world, for the big three, where there's a difference between the three, of course, and what you're building right now.
Well, that is kind of the gist of it. I'm trying to keep people from getting locked into a particular platform, so that should they have a moral issue with any particular platform, like when OpenAI went right after the military contracts after Anthropic had said no, we won't mass surveil our own people, and no, we won't have fully autonomous weapons. Well, there should always be, again, a human in the loop making that last decision. Because what kind of morality do you expect out of a machine? I mean, honestly. So I like to keep their data separate, as I'd sort of mentioned before. I like my base model. Most of my base models are off Anthropic, but then again, I sort of fell into the whole glasswing trap last week, with Mythos being this whole, it's going to destroy the world. And well, it just turned out that was just hype. The assignment was to escape the sandbox. It didn't just go outside of the sandbox and start doing stuff on its own. It was literally instructed to do so. So there's a lot of hype from all of these companies, including Anthropic, around, fear. I mean, we used to, in marketing, we always said like sex sells, but I mean, clearly the news cycle tells you that fear sells even more, right? And keeps people engaged much more. So I try to bring as much light to that as possible. Now, most of my customers aren't really interested in having a long dialogue about the morality of AI. And, they've got a problem to solve. So which one is the best one? Okay, this is the best one. And then I try to build that sort of trust around, I kind of have an idea what's going on. And I'm going to keep you safe as much as I can.
And then something else, I think you're still teaching UX as well at Georgia College. What's it like working with people that age these days, and how do you teach in the age of AI? Especially,
They're an interesting bunch, being digital natives. So they're not afraid of the technology as much as, say, the boomers are. Most people my age literally won't touch it. They're just, I don't know what it does. That's really no excuse. But that being said, in my particular platform, it's like my particular course, it's not really a problem, because what I do is I teach them the process. There's 5 elements to the user experience, right? Yeah, I have to have business requirements and user requirements. And then you go through the scope, what it does, what it doesn't do. And then you start doing the wireframe so that you get your information architecture and your information design together. Then you start worrying about what it looks like and putting the brand on it and all that stuff, right? So I teach them that process. So in each one of those components, they're free to use AI to, create their user personas and whatever, because honestly, it creates a much better user persona than I ever would. Right? I just we don't spend that kind of time developing out what the character of our customers are. Because it would literally take a week to put in the kind of research that these tools have access to. They also can spit out wireframes like in minutes, like literally. And all you need to do, again, you need to be the decision maker. You need to be the editor. You need to understand that you kind of need a shopping cart button on your homepage so people can get to their cart, right? So That higher level is the stuff that I'm teaching. So it's as long as they get those components in, the output is fine. Like, and I will say a lot of, there is also within my college, there's still a lot of hesitancy with some of the other teachers to allow AI in their course. And there is some validity to it, because the idea of unloading all of your cognitive decisions to AI is a problem. Like when you ask it if this guy is my friend, or, you paste, like, seriously, like some of the decision making is bad. But you have to teach them critical thinking skills, and the tool is not going to go away. And if you ignore it, they're just going to do it without your consent, without your input. And Lord knows where that goes. So I'd rather sort of teach them, how to use it properly and what they're thinking about and how to input and keep it, again, sort of within scope.
Keeping them visual natives and not offline.
Yeah.
So, I think that was really my last question. So, what's next for GPT Studio and Workilo? Where are you going to take it? So, what do you think the future is like in 1, 2, 3, 5 years, which is very far out these days?
5 years is like a lifetime in the development world. More fully automated and easier checkpoints is ultimately where it's gonna go. There's gonna be less configuration. Right now, there's still a lot of JSON objects that you got to get back and forth. So it's going to be, the usability, I think, is going to become a little more human friendly. As some people have said, programming is going to be by voice only. And so I do think that, that is basically the new interface, is speaking. I very rarely touch my keyboard now, only to correct the things that it got wrong. I'm not sure why, but my Canadian accent, Siri often makes me look like a fool with the words that she comes out with based on what I actually said. So there's still, even at that level, you still have to edit it. And that's the other thing. We've been living with AI for at least a decade. Nobody's really understood that, right? So even your HomePod and your Amazon Cube and whatever, there's AI involved in how that accesses and creates your playlists or your shopping lists, right? It's just now becoming more forefront. It's becoming the generative AI, I guess, is sort of what everybody is calling AI. But machine learning has been around for a long time now.
So true. Thank you so much for coming on today, Clive. If people want to look for you, where can they find you? Where can they follow your work?
You can find me at agencyinabox.ca is my parent company, and there's links to both the Workilo and GPT Studio project there. And you can find me on LinkedIn by Clive Moore. I'm pretty much all over the internet with my first and last name.
Cool. We'll put that in the links as well so people can click. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for coming on today, Clive.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
As we wrap up another episode of the CTO Compass, thank you for taking the time to invest in you. The speed at which tech and AI develop is increasing, demanding a new era of leaders in tech. Leaders that can juggle team and culture, code and infra, cyber and compliance, all whilst working closely with board members and stakeholders. We're here to help you learn from others, set your own goals and navigate your own journey. And until next time, keep learning, keep pushing, and never stop growing.